Robert Bassett, Cork. William Chaldecott, Salisbury, Wiltshire.
Richard and Elizabeth Hobson, 28 Northumberland Avenue, Dunlara.
Adam Smith, 24 Tivoli Terrace, East Dunleary.
You feeling-hearted Christians, all in country or in town, come listen to my doleful song, which I have just penned down. 'Tis all about the wartime act, that awful tragedy, when the Dublin mailboat Leinster was sunk in the Irish Sea.
"90 years on from the sinking of the Leinster mailboat, a commemorative service is held in Dunleary to honour the hundreds who died in the greatest ever loss of life on the Irish Sea.
On the 10th of October 1918, shortly after 9 o'clock, the boat left from Carlisle Pier just behind us and set sail for Holyhead. About an hour into the voyage, when the ship was at the Kish Bank, a German submarine fired 3 torpedoes at the ship. The Leinster blew up quickly and sunk. At the time, Ireland was part of what was called the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and so we were officially at war with Germany. Every ship, regardless of whether it was a military, a naval or merchant ship, every ship was considered to be a target. The Leinster was just another target as far as they were concerned. Normally the Leinster didn't carry troops, but that particular day it was packed with troops. So from the German point of view, they got lucky that day. There were over 500 lost. The official death toll was 501, but my research, I have identified at least 530. Unfortunately, the sinking has been forgotten in that it was coming near the end of the war. 2 months later, you had the 1918 general election when Sinn Féin swept to power, and then shortly afterwards you had the War of Independence. So the Leinster was forgotten in the setting up of our state and in the Civil War which followed.
But it hasn't been forgotten today, as relatives of those who died gather on the seafront in Dunleary. Among them is Jenny Kelly, who was just 6 months old when her father died in the tragedy 90 years ago.
I'm very proud, really, because I was not before time either. Took too long, considering that I'd no contact at all with him. And I mean, a good dad. Because I have the family to prove it.
The Germans themselves were just as much victims in this story. Germany was blockaded by the Royal Navy and people were starving. No food could get through. These were all young men. The boat commander was the oldest. He was 27, a married man with 2 children. And his crew were all aged 19 and 20. And they were lost on the way back to Germany when their submarine struck a minefield in the North Sea, and they would have all died terrible deaths. They were just as much victims. Nobody wins in war. Everybody is a victim.
When the Dublin mailboat Leinster was sunk in the Irish Sea.
Remember remembering those who died when the mailboat Leinster was sunk in the Irish Sea. There were more than 300 soldiers on board, and while not all of their bodies were recovered, those that were brought here to Grangegorman Cemetery in Dublin. Fergus Darcy is the author of the book Remembering the War Dead, and that's a publication that deals with how we remember, or didn't, those who died in the Great War. Fergus, first of all, why were they all brought here to Grangegorman?
Well, there are two principal reasons, Mary. The first is that Grangegorman was the designated military cemetery for British Army people in the Dublin region, and had been so since 1876. And the second reason is that the scale of the catastrophe was such that they simply had to find a place quickly that could accommodate the large number, over 140.
And why are the headstones all of the same shape?
Well, this was something that the Imperial War Graves Commission, or today the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, had decided on after much argument around the early 1920s. They came up with a standard design that wasn't too large and that was designed to treat everybody with equality.
I presume, Fergus, that given that the war was fought in France and Belgium, there aren't too many gravestones like this around the country.
Well, in Ireland there's nothing on the scale of what one finds on the continent. But on the other hand, there are over 700 cemeteries on this island with graves of the First and Second World War, over 500 in the Republic, and they contain the remains of over close on 5,000 people who perished.
You have documented them in your book, Remembering the War Dead. Do you think that we in this country now remember them in a fitting way, or is there more to be done?
Well, I suppose one could say there's always more to be done, but I would have to say that in the course of the last 25 years there's been a veritable revolution in our remembrance, in our remembering, both at the level of central government, local government, and I think more than anything else perhaps due to the efforts of individuals in towns and villages throughout Ireland. And one can have splendid memorials from the reconstructed Island Bridge Memorial Park to the very modest memorial that one finds in the village of Myvockley in County Westmeath. So there has been a huge, I think, sea change in people's attitudes and people's endeavours at remembering.
A silent thought, a silent tear, keeps his memory ever dear. Well, that's taken from the headstone of a 19-year-old soldier who perished on the Leinster. And I think it really sums up how anybody would feel who lost somebody during the Great War. Now, tomorrow is Armistice Day, and there'll be commemorative events here, but particularly in Belgium. We'll be there, and you can see that programme on Wednesday night here on RTE1. So until then, from Grangegorman Military Cemetery and from everybody on the Nationwide team, Iwahagwif agus Gadeshiv Slán.
And on next